This is Ptolemy's map from 150 AD, showing the only known world at the time. And this is the first ever globe map, the Heim globe of 1492. As you can see, there is no American continent on it. People didn't know it existed. The old world knew nothing about the new one, and vice versa. Europe thought that across the Atlantic there was just Asia. Interesting. So what was the plan? To go to Asia? With Ottomans taking over Constantinople in 1453 and the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, the land trade with Asia was cut off. Portugal was the first to start looking for the sea route, and by 1488 they reached the tip of Africa. And Spain? And Spain could not follow the same route. They were forbidden to sail south. Okay. And so they would go west, across the ocean. Smart. Right, they already knew the world was a globe, but they didn't know how big it was, how far away India was, and about an entirely new continent they were yet to discover. I know, Christopher Columbus, right? Right, he would discover America, but ironically, he would remain convinced it was Asia. But did you know that he was not Spanish? Then, how did he sail for Spain? He was a Genoese Italian. Genoa was a maritime city-state with trade colonies scattered around the Mediterranean. One of them was in Portugal. There, Columbus tried to persuade the Portuguese king to sponsor his ambitious expedition to India by going west. But Portugal, by then having already reached the tip of Africa, had India just around the corner, as they thought, which it was, in a way. So they screwed him. Yeah, he went to Spain instead, and they struck a deal. So Spain now had a chance to get to India too, though going into the unknown. And why couldn't they go south, you said? The dispute started with the Spanish conquest of the Canary Islands. And later, when the king of Castile died, his daughter, Joanna, married to the Portuguese king, and his half-sister, Isabella, married to the king of Aragon, warred with each other over the Castilian crown. Eventually, they made a deal. Isabella gets the crown and the Castilian land, and Joanna, meaning Portugal, gets the hegemony over the sea. This was the Treaty of Alcáçovas. Thus, Castile united with Aragon, and Portugal secured exclusive rights to navigate, conquer, and trade in all the Atlantic Ocean, south of the Spanish Canary Islands. In August 1492, Columbus, following the trade winds, sailed on. In 2 months, he landed on what is believed to be San Salvador Island of the modern-day Bahamas. Here, locals presented him with a tobacco leaf. Tobacco was unknown in the old world. And what people used to smoke before that? They didn't, actually. You're kidding. No. I know, it's crazy. What else did they find here that was unknown? Overall, Spanish conquistadors brought potato, corn, tomato, cacao beans, chocolate. No potato? It's crazy. What did they eat, man? Alright, anything else? Pumpkin, chili pepper. There was no pepper as well? There was black pepper from Asia, but that is seeds, and this one is a fruit. It's a totally different species. Why then we call them both pepper? That's a historical mistake. When Columbus was fed with a meal spiced with the chili pepper, it tasted similarly hot, and so, thinking he was in Asia, he called it pepper too, and so the name stuck. Okay, same as we call Native Americans Indians, right? Exactly. And what was unknown to the New World? Wheat, rice, apple. They knew no horses, cattle, sheep, or goats, no chicken. No chickens? So then, the chicken or egg first question was totally irrelevant in America. They had turkey instead. Okay, crazy. What was even crazier was the exchange of germs. Deadly exchange. Diseases. Conquistadors brought measles, smallpox, and influenza, and took syphilis back. This caused a demographic catastrophe known as the Great Dying, reducing the indigenous population of Americas by 80–90% in 100 years. Oh man. The expedition discovered Cuba and the island of Hispaniola before it returned. When the old world learned of the new discoveries, Portugal raised concerns about its hegemony. The dispute was resolved by drawing a demarcation line 2,000 kilometers west of Capo Verde, nearly halfway to the islands visited by Christopher. Everything discovered west of this line would now belong to Spain, from pole to pole. It was the Treaty of Tordesillas. Just like that. In September 1493, Columbus set out on his second voyage. They settled what would become the capital of Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, named so because they arrived there on Sunday. Their primary goal was gold, and the local peaceful Taino people had some. Columbus offered them protection from another native people, the fierce Caribs. That's Caribbean? And cannibalism too. Caribs were cannibals, and the word actually derives from their name too. The Tainos called them Cariba. Spaniards picked it up as Caniba, and so cannibal, a person who eats human flesh. They reconnoitered the region for 2 years and named Dominica, Guadalupe, Montserrat, Antigua, San Martin, Saint Bartholomew, Saint Kitts, and Saint Nevis. Interesting fact is that due to confusion, Saint Martin was mistakenly misplaced with Saint Nevis on future maps. So it could have been Saint Kitts and Martin instead? The third voyage brought Columbus onto the continent. They discovered the delta of the Orinoco River. They named Trinidad too. From this voyage, Columbus returned home not as a free man, but in chains, contained in the hold of a ship, accused of slavery, rapes and robberies, and depriving of the rights of the local people. Wow. Yeah, but the Queen pardoned him, and on his fourth voyage, Columbus scouted a big chunk of the Central American coast before being shipwrecked on Jamaica for a year, with his 14-year-old son Ferdinand, but rescued eventually. He was 51. In 3 years, feeling betrayed, he died in Valladolid, Spain. Betrayed? Yes, his son would write. He never forgot the ordeal. I always saw those irons in his bedroom, which he demanded be buried with his bones. Anyway, his followers were no better. Out of the approximately 300,000 Indians in Hispaniola at the time of the first voyage, only 6,000 were reported by census in 1508, and only 500 were found in 1548. Yeah, other expeditions followed. One of them carried another Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci. On his first trip, they reached Lake Maracaibo, where they found indigenous stilt houses which reminded Vespucci of Venice, and so they called it Venezuela, meaning Little Venezia. Wow, interesting. On his second voyage, Amerigo explored the continent extensively and sailed as far as Patagonia. Unlike Columbus, he believed they struck not Asia, but an entirely new continent. He would write and publish a descriptive pamphlet called Mundus Novus, Latin for New World. After that, one German cartographer would publish the Universalis Cosmographia, a massive 12-page world map. This was the first map to use the name America. The name honored Vespucci, but when the cartographer learned that Vespucci did not discover the land, he renamed it Terra Incognita. But by this time, about 1,000 copies of the original had been distributed. The name America stuck. We live in a fake world. Indians are not Indians, pepper is not pepper, and America is not America. It should have been North and South Colombia, and the United States of Colombia. And Colombia? Yes, in his name. Okay, at least something. They settled Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Darien region in modern Panama, first settlement in Cuba, discovery of Florida. They named it so because it was Easter, observed in Spain as Pascua Florida, Festival of Flowers. Alright. And back in Europe, Spain gained some lands too. They annexed Navarre and conquered the tiny peninsula of Melilla, which is in present-day Morocco. Until this day, Melilla is a Spanish town within Morocco. Can't Morocco claim it back? It cannot. Melilla was not conquered from Morocco. There was no Morocco back then, but different kingdoms, and Melilla belonged to neither of them, but rather some barbaric pirates that bothered the Spanish coast from time to time. I see. Interesting. Yep. Also, 19-year-old Spanish King Charles V was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor. He was elected as a heir of the Habsburg dynasty, one of the most powerful dynasties in the history of Europe. They possessed the lands that comprised a collection of kingdoms, duchies, and other counties. Charles inherited these lands too, after his grandfather, the Habsburg ruler Maximilian I, died.